thank all of you for coming out on this evening for what I think will be a very, very interesting and enjoyable evening. As Rebecca said early in my presidency, I challenged the University of Iowa to become a leader in sustainability. Universities have always been places where new ideas are nurtured and social progress is born. In taking up the challenge of sustainability, we are acting not only in our own interests, but more importantly in the interest of our children, our students, the society we serve, and future generations that we will never know. We remain just as committed to our sustainability goals today as when we set them. And I'm very pleased at the progress that we're making in offering sustainability education programs, in conducting research that focuses on the protection of the environment, in saving energy and increasing recycling across campus, and in building LEED certified facilities and in many other initiatives throughout the university. Our knowledge of and commitment to sustainability is enhanced when we bring in visionary thinkers and leaders to share ideas with us. And that's why it's my pleasure this evening to introduce to you our speaker, L. Hunter Lovins. Hunter Lovins is president and founder of Natural Capitalism Solutions. NCS educates senior decision makers in business, government, and civil society to restore and enhance natural and human capital while increasing prosperity and quality of life. Trained as a sociologist and lawyer, Hunter Lovins is also currently a professor of sustainable business management at Bainbridge Graduate Institute, Bard College, and Denver University. She was a founding professor of business at Presidio Graduate School, one of the first accredited programs offering an MBA in sustainable management. Ms. Lovins has consulted for scores of industries, companies, large and small, and governments worldwide, including the International Finance Corporation, Royal Dutch Shell, Interface, Cliff Bar, and even Walmart. Governmental clients include the Pentagon, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the Department of Energy, and the governments of Jamaica, Afghanistan, and Australia. Recipients of such honors as the Right Livelihood Award, the Lindbergh Award, and Leadership in Business. Hunter Lovins was named Time Magazine's 2000 Hero of the Planet, and in 2009, Newsweek dubbed her a green business icon. She has co-authored 9 books and hundreds of papers, including the 1999 book, Natural Capitalism, the 2006 ebook, Climate Protection Manual for Cities, and the 2009 book, Transforming Industry in Asia. Hunter Lovins' expertise covers a broad range of areas, including natural capitalism, sustainable development, globalization, energy and resource policy, economic development, climate change, land management, and fire rescue and emergency medicine. Did I miss any of those? It's an amazing list, it really is. And it's an amazing person. We are really honored that she's here with us tonight to share her knowledge and vision with the University of Iowa and the Iowa City community. So please help me welcome L. Hunter Lovins.
Thank you, President Mason. And are we on? Does this work for y'all? Perfect. I want to dampen a few lights. I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to be in Iowa. Yeah, that's a little better for y'all. Perfect. Well done. I love technology when it works. This community and this university, with its commitment to sustainability, is not only bringing all of you a higher quality of life, a better future, you're going to be able to endure. Universities in general are in trouble as education goes digital, as all those of you who are students dealing with student loans, making the decision, what are you going to do with your future? Universities that commit to sustainability will be the center of the conversation. So I'm deeply honored to be here, and thank you for your commitment. How many of you believe in climate change? Frankly, this isn't an issue of faith. Let's reserve faith for conversations about more important things. This is an issue of data, of science. But people who ought to know better are saying things like, oh, it's a hoax. Yes, the science is uncertain. That's what science is. We argue. How fast is it coming? How bad is it going to be? We actually don't know the answer to that. It's coming faster than the scientists' models predict, and it's beginning to look like it might even be worse than the models predict. Here's the science I like on global warming. And it doesn't matter. Now, I say this with all deference to the great climate scientists, but let's assume the skeptics are right. Now, frankly, don't go to Vegas on the odds of this being true, but if all you are is a profit-maximizing capitalist, you'll do exactly what you would do if you were scared to death about climate change, because we know how to solve this one at a profit. If it's a hoax, we'll make a lot of money. If it's real, we'll make a lot of money. Either way, let's go. We can argue about the science in the bar afterwards. That's the thesis of my latest book, The Way Out: Kickstarting Capitalism to Save Our Economic Ass. Because that's really what we're talking about, and it is appropriate that we are here in a school of business, because this is business. This isn't faith. Save faith for your mosques and synagogues and churches. DuPont was one of the earliest companies to commit to cut its emissions of greenhouse gases, in their case, 65% below their 1990 levels by 2010. This is a bit more ambitious than our federal government persists in saying we could not possibly afford to meet the Kyoto protocols of 7% below 1990 levels. As DuPont joined Greenpeace, they made this announcement in the name of increasing shareholder value, and they've done rather well. Between 2000 and 2005, they saved $3 billion, excuse me, billion with a B. And they way more than met their goal, 72% below their 1990 levels. Andrew Winston, author of Green Recovery, points out that their eco-efficiency program, squeezing waste out of their operations, is saving them now $2.2 billion a year. That's the same as their profitability. Here's a company that's profitable because it's protecting the climate. This is not a conversation about polar bears. Frankly, you wouldn't like a polar bear if you encountered one. It will eat you. This is a conversation about business, about sustainable business in the truest sense of the word, businesses that are profitable and that are solving the serious problems facing us. Who said this? There can't be anything good about putting all these chemicals in the air, about smog you see in cities, putting chemicals in rivers in third world countries so that someone can buy an item for less money in a developed country. These things are inherently wrong whether you're an environmentalist or not. Who said this? Some brilliant person. In fact, he is. The CEO of Walmart. Walmart. If you'd have told me 5-10 years ago that the entity on the planet doing the most to drive sustainability would be the evil empire, I'd have offered to eat my hat. But here we are. Walmart has pledged to become 100% renewable, zero waste, carbon neutral, sell sustainable products. Why? Trust me, this is not out of the goodness of their hearts. Because it's saving them money. Large amounts of money. Squeezing waste out of their operations is driving Walmart's capacity to offer everyday low prices. And because they were at risk of losing their franchise to operate. Walmart was run out of Germany, not because anybody passed a law, because the Germans wouldn't shop there because they didn't like their social policies. Walmart is avoiding the cost of distrust. Here's the sort of thing they're doing. What's the difference between the picture on the bottom and the picture on top? Doors. They put doors on the refrigerators. Saved themselves about 70% of the energy cost of running those refrigerator cabinets. And then somebody said, you know those lights that are inside? If you go upstairs here and look at the Pepsi machine, the Coke machine, you'll see lights inside the Coke machine. That's a heater. They said, why do we have lights inside of our refrigerator cabinets? And then somebody said, how about LED lights? LEDs love to be cold. So they put LEDs in. Then somebody said, wait a minute, why is the light even on if nobody's standing in front of it? So they put in motion detectors. What they hadn't realized was the kids love it. They love to run up to the counters, boink, the lights go on. Where the kids are, the parents are, Walmart sells more stuff. Here's what they're doing. Walmart has, they actually don't even know how many suppliers they have, 60 to 100,000 suppliers. They have sent out to their whole supply chain this scorecard. Question number 1, do you measure your carbon footprint? Question number 2, do you report it to the Carbon Disclosure Project? The who? CDP was a group of kids out of the United Kingdom who about 10 years ago sent out to the Financial Times 500 biggest companies on earth, a little survey. What's your carbon footprint? As you might imagine, for the first few years, the companies ignored this. Who died and made them God? When you are backed by institutional investors, the big pension funds with $78 trillion, you can refuse to answer for a year or two, but not forever. Now, essentially, all of the biggest companies on earth answer CDP. CDP reckons for an average-sized company that reports to it, there is $30 to $40 million in uncaptured energy efficiency savings, what's called below the line on the McKinsey cost abatement curve. This is a curve McKinsey did to try to figure out what are all the ways to decarbonize the economy. Some of them, like energy efficiency, are below the line. They are a very, very good investment. They pay you back money. Some of them, like tree planting and building very large power plants, are above the line. They cost you money. McKinsey's point was the area above the line is roughly the same as the area below the line. Therefore, we can largely decarbonize the economy at net zero cost. What CDP has said is it's even better than that. There's a lot more savings below the line than even McKinsey was counting. If you start walking around your community and looking at the ways that you're using energy, you will realize there's a lot of waste. Here's the rest of the Walmart scorecard. Are you, supplier to Walmart, establishing publicly available purchasing guidelines for your suppliers around sustainability? Walmart wants to drive this 4 layers deep in the supply chain. This is why I say Walmart is probably doing more than any other entity to drive sustainability. Now, does this make Walmart green? No, of course not. But they are a formidable business factor that if you are a manufacturer that sells to Walmart, you ignore at your peril. They are putting solar panels on roofs. 75% of their buildings in California now are solar. And I suppose we shouldn't be all that surprised. I guess Sam Walton was a heck of an entrepreneur. He said, incrementalism is innovation's worst enemy. We don't want continuous improvement, we want radical change. Here's the kind of change he's getting. Mi Rancho Tortillas, a little company out in California that we worked with because they want to sell to Walmart. Their COO, Joe Santana, had no earthly interest in sustainability, but Walmart did, so Joe does. And he said, what do I do? We helped him implement a lighting retrofit program, get more efficient ovens to bake the tortillas, eliminate waste packaging. Walmart is particularly annoyed about you sending them extra packaging, which they then have to pay to take away. Joe is going to save $450,000 over the next couple of years through this efficiency program. You better believe he's now a big fan of sustainability. Company after company after company, cut your emissions, drive your savings. What are we talking about? My team walked into a company, 6,300 computers and monitors that are left on 24/7 because of some urban myths. Shortens the life of the computer to turn it off and on. No. IT needs it left on 24/7. No. One night a week will do fine. In this company just publishing a policy, turn the darn thing off if you're not sitting in front of it, would save them $700,000. This is free money. The economist amongst us would say this isn't possible. We have, after all, the perfect market economy. If this savings existed, it would have been captured. This is a real story. And nationally, we waste $2.8 billion every year buying and burning energy to run computers with nobody home. Ford Motor Company figured it out, published such a policy, saved themselves $1 million in 2010. You can do this at home or in your small business. Well, it's beer money. The team walked into a big warehouse, 7 million square foot distribution center, floor to ceiling boxes, 500-watt light bulbs shining down on the tops of boxes. This is called inventory afraid of the dark. The guys down below had task lighting so they could see where they were going. We said, you all have a switch? $650,000. It should not surprise us that our European and Asian competitors who, are signatories to the Kyoto Protocol to protect the climate, use half the energy to produce a unit of economic value as we do. This is a competitiveness issue. We know that when you save energy in a community, per megawatt saved, you generate over $2 million in increased economic activity, over $500,000 in increased wages, and 10 times the number of jobs that you would get if you invested in a traditional power plant. Where do you start? Let's try buildings. Most of us spend most of our time inside of them. They are responsible for nationally 40 to 50% of our greenhouse gas emissions, a lot of our electricity use. American buildings are responsible, I believe, for 17% of global electricity use. Listen. That hum is waste. When you can hear an HVAC system working, it's not as efficient as it could be. And one of the reasons I have these lights turned out, these are little heaters. These are 500-watt light bulbs shining down and washing the screen so you couldn't see it. When you put people in good green buildings, and by building LEED buildings here, you will increase test scores. In studies by Pacific Gas and Electric, 20 to 26% higher test scores in good green buildings, 40% higher retail sales, 6 to 16% increased labor productivity, decreased illness, absenteeism. It's worth doing it just for those reasons. Forget the energy savings. Even if you don't give a damn about the climate, it's worth doing simply to get the increased labor productivity. What you pay for people is dramatically higher than what you pay for energy. So a lot of managers say, energy is a small part of my cost of doing business. I really don't care about it. But what you do about the energy is what gives you this increase in productivity. A 1% increase in labor productivity swamps all the energy savings. Again, notice, no polar bears. Richard Branson's group, Carbon War Room, is going after commercial buildings, retrofitting commercial buildings, working with Lockheed Martin, Energy, Barclays, the bank, Y-Green. For every million that they invest, they get 10 million back in increased economic activity, 4 million back in increased tax revenues. They're going after Miami-Dade and Sacramento, California first. I think San Diego next, then they'll start rolling it out across the country. Again, this is just good business. And I heard last week that France has just put in place an ordinance, a law, that all commercial buildings must supply their own energy and treat their own waste. Here in Iowa, you have an enormous opportunity. Environment Iowa has shown that Iowa, which is now 85% dependent on coal, can meet all of your energy needs, in fact, vastly more than all of your energy needs, with the renewable energy here in Iowa. Has it been hot enough for you? You have this opportunity to unleash the green economy, deal with the impacts of climate change, and build prosperity. 60% of the state has been in extreme drought. 80% of it, the soil is moisture deficient. The increase in the cost of corn is driving increase in food prices across the country and indeed around the world. Remember, it was a food riot in Tunisia that kicked off the Arab Spring. Back the last time food was at record high prices, as it is now. What do? Good policy. Why is it that California gets 70% more sunlight than cold, cloudy Germany? But last year, Germany installed 28 times the amount of solar that went in California last year. Good policy. The Germans as a country have what's called a feed-in tariff. In this country, they're called clean contracts. You pay a little more for any green electron. Germany plans to be 100% renewably powered, perhaps as early as 2050. Created, that number's actually wrong, 480,000 new jobs. And by next year, the cost of solar in Germany will be competitive with grid electricity, called grid parity. Oh, you say, when you pay more for green electrons, it's going to raise everybody's rates. Can't have that. Deutsche Bank did a study. Yep, it's going to raise your rates. 2 to 3 euro a month, $50 a year total, 8.6 billion euro more. Ooh, that sounds like a lot. What Deutsche Bank found was, had they done nothing, just continued to burn coal, they would have paid 9.4 billion euro more. You're going to pay more. You're going to pay less more if you have good policy than if you don't. Get that? I know it's a hard concept to wrap your head around. Iowa's already 20% renewably powered. If you unleash the green economy by 2020, Environment Iowa reckons 20,000 new jobs, saving consumers $1 billion each year. That sounds worth doing. You have the renewable capacity to meet your needs 17 times over. California, the green economy is already growing 3 times as fast as the traditional economy. The traditional economy is only 9% manufacturing. The green economy is a quarter manufacturing, 25%. Do we want to bring manufacturing back to the United States? We know how to. And what's interesting, Kauffman Foundation over in Kansas did a study of jobs. Everybody's saying jobs, 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 jobs. We got to have jobs. Okay. What creates jobs? It turns out since 1977, in all but 7 years, the big companies were net job destroyers. The job creators, small, local, particularly entrepreneurial companies, the startups. Innovation, Innovation Iowa. If you want jobs, it will come from communities like this, not from elephant hunting some big company to come and locate here, unless they're in the green economy, but from creating the jobs here, from startup companies that you are incubating here in the university. You can see the numbers. The big companies are net job destroyers. Again, it comes from good policy. In Sonoma County in 2009, in the teeth of the recession, the county put together a fund to enable citizens, small business people, to get the money to install solar or energy efficiency. And in the first 9 months of 2009, construction trades went up 8.4%. It's not rocket science. If you're going to put solar on a building, if you're going to do energy efficiency on a building, you don't put the building on a boat and send it to China. You do it in your community. In neighboring Napa that did not have the program, jobs went down 3%. This is a program called PACE Financing, Property Assessed Clean Energy. The county loans you the money, you pay it back out of a slight increase to your property taxes if you borrow the money. If your neighbor does not borrow the money, their property tax stays the same. This is not a across-the-board tax increase. And if you sell your house, that bill stays with the house. It's not a personal loan to you. Oh, then those paragons of financial rectitude, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, both bankrupt, said, we will redline any jurisdiction that puts in place PACE financing. And the program died across the country. Except in Sonoma, where they said, the heck with that, we're going ahead with it. This is good business for us. There is now a congressional effort to ban Fannie and Freddie from interfering with PACE financing. However, you can make book, it is not going anywhere till after the election. But here's something each one of you can do. Write to your representative and ask that they support allowing communities to have PACE financing. Organization called pace.org. In Germany, there are towns that are 100% renewably powered. Wilspolsried, over 300% renewably powered. So they sell the excess, getting $5.7 million a year for the town. In Germany, the renewable energy is locally owned. Sound a little different than Iowa? It used to be true here in Iowa. Ethanol was originally put in place to be small local production. And then the big money came in from outside, and the production tax credit was taken and made into a blender's tax credit. At which point the local ownership went away, and it's not being used to support Iowa agriculture. But it should be. So should wind. In Germany, the local community owns the wind tower. And there's one of them in the town, not vast fleets of them owned by the utility. These sorts of details matter, but it can happen very fast. This last year, in 1 month, Germany installed 2 gigawatts of new solar. A gigawatt is roughly a nuclear-sized chunk of electricity. In Southern California, we were building a megawatt a week before the '08 collapse. Southern California Edison built a 250 megawatt power plant on roofs spread around the county at a price point, $875 million, that's eerily close to the $800 million that it would have cost to build a coal plant up in Montana that was canceled. The utility commission there said coal is no longer the cheap option. Wind is. Wind. In the last 2 years, we've brought on more new wind capacity around the world than the entire nuclear capacity of Japan. And I've never heard anybody call for an evacuation plan from a wind farm. Wind spills, that's a bad one. And check out China. China has surpassed the US as the world's wind power. Now this is good news. Lester Brown points out that China, if it grows at a historic rate, by 2030 will want more oil than the world now lifts, or probably can ever lift. And more cars, coal, cotton, concrete. The future's not possible. When you realize that the future's not possible, it's gonna change. We may not yet know how, we know it's gonna change. And here's one of the ways. China is investing very real money in renewable energy. Why? In part because it will give them several $trillion in new GDP and millions of new jobs. Half the solar now is Chinese. This is a megawatt, grid integrated on a roof in China. Kind of pretty, yeah? Rizhao, China. City of 3 million, 99% have solar hot water. How many of you do? Thank you. But that's why. They are looking to export. They know that if they get the volume production up, they get the per unit cost down. And they're looking to export. This is not a red or a blue issue. My friend Jim Woolsey used to run the CIA. Jim is most assuredly not a liberal. He drives a plug-in hybrid car that he fuels off the solar panels on his roof. He used to have a bumper sticker on the back that said, "Osama bin Laden hates my car." He sees this as a national security issue. And I think he's right. The military is going green. Why? Because they know that much of what they haul in places like Iraq or Afghanistan is fuel. The military uses a lot of fuel. And for every 24 convoys, which are hauling almost all fuel, a Marine comes home in a body bag. They don't want to have to haul that fuel. There are now 2 forward operating bases in Afghanistan that are 100% renewably powered. And the guys like it. They say it's lighter. These old out solar panels to run their communications are lighter than the batteries they used to have to carry. Secretary Ray Mabus is creating the Great Green Fleet, Secretary of the Navy. He wants the Navy to be half renewably powered by 2020. They've run a frigate from Washington State down to San Diego, say exactly the same performance, running on half biofuel. Biofuel is something Iowa knows something about. The F-18 Green Hornet, flying on half biofuel. If you'd have told me the US military would be the other entity on the planet doing the most to drive sustainability, I'd also offered to eat my hat. We have strange bedfellows. But it ought to be a wake-up call for business. If these entities are going green, why aren't you? Think about it. Go back to the first industrial revolution when we lost our power. That's interesting. Interesting. It doesn't like that one. Huh. Okay, there. Come on. It doesn't like it. We'll go on to the next one. There are 6 waves of innovation, each one bigger than the last. The first one, this is from the, let's see if it'll do it. Nope, doesn't like it. This is from The Economist magazine. They pointed out the 6 waves of innovation over history. The first is the Industrial Revolution, when we invented, there it is, thank you, well done. We invented commerce using water power to make iron and textiles. And then James Watt and the steam engine and locomotives. Where did that happen? Where was the first Industrial Revolution? England. And what was happening geopolitically at the time? The sun never set on the British Empire. The British Navy ruled the waves. Why? Because they innovated. And then some fool found oil in Pennsylvania, and Henry Ford built a car, and Thomas Edison built a light bulb in General Electric. And power started to shift across the Atlantic until by the time World War II rolled around, the industrial might of Detroit was able to pivot in 90 days from making cars to making tanks and airplanes. The US entered the war, we won it, and this has been the American century. And then we moved on to these little things in our pockets with 3,000 songs on them. I really didn't know I needed one until I couldn't live without it. But what's next? Those of you who are students, what are you going to do for employment? Are we going to be a service economy? Remember, who innovates rules the world. Y'all fancy speaking Chinese? The Europeans are innovating. Siemens, the big German industrial conglomerate, sees a pan-European smart grid, renewably powered, as their industrial future. They're getting out of coal, nuclear. They're looking at big wind off the North German and Danish coast, wave off Scotland. Scotland reckons to be 100% renewably powered by 2020. Wave off Portugal, solar across the south, biofuels, distributed generation everywhere. All hooked together with a smart grid, smart houses, smart cars. The batteries in the cars will be storage for this grid, evening out the intermittency of the renewables. Will they do it? I don't know. But this kind of innovation is what's driving German prosperity. And Google. Drive your car and park it in the shade of the solar panels at Google. And if it's a plug-in hybrid car, you're fueling it off the solar panels while you're at work. Google announced a program called RE less than C, renewable energy costing less than coal. When Google did this, General Electric said, Google, the advertising company, if they're doing it, we have to do it. And about a year ago, a friend of mine at GE wrote me and said, we've done it. Our wind turbine now costs less than coal. And now we're moving on to solar. Sustainability is happening. Whether it be sustainability certifications or sustainability education or my friend Yvonne Chenard getting the cover of Fortune magazine, this stuff is breaking out everywhere. In part because we're in trouble. Dr. Tom Lovejoy at the Smithsonian Institution 2 years ago released Global Biodiversity Outlook 3. This is very sobering science. So we're losing every major ecosystem on the planet. 3 of them are tipping into collapse. Coral reefs. Sorry, scuba divers, business as usual. Perhaps as early as 2050, there will be no living coral reefs on planet Earth. If any of you have scuba diving in a coral reef on your bucket list, do it fast. Report out this week. The Great Barrier Reef in Australia will likely be half dead within 10 years. The Amazon. This is a bit more serious. This is the Earth's lungs. And the oceans are acidifying. Now, in Iowa, why do you care about the oceans? Well, I don't know about you, but I'm a little sentimental about breathing, and half the oxygen on Earth comes from these little calciferous critters called phytoplankton. Acidify the ocean, they lose the integrity of their shells, die, and there goes the oxygen. My friend, the business leader Ray Anderson, put it rather simply: what's the business case for ending life on Earth? Ray was one of the first business leaders to commit his company to becoming sustainable. He announced Mission Zero: zero impact, zero footprint. They're half the way there. Their goal was to hit it by 2020. Carbon emissions down, fossil fuel use down, water use down, waste down, renewables up, recycling up, sales up by 2/3, profits doubled. Ray did this because he believed it was the right thing to do. What he discovered in the process, it's also the smart thing to do. Ray was one of the first, but there are now 41 actually studies by all the big management consulting houses, Harvard Business Review, MIT Sloan Report, showing that the companies that are the sustainability leaders are financially outperforming their less sustainable peers. Harvard, sustainability is not the burden on the bottom line it was thought to be. It is the touchstone of all of innovation. And in the future, only companies that have it as a goal will achieve competitive advantage. When those wild-eyed environmentalists at Goldman Sachs tell you that the companies that are the leaders in environment, social, and good governance policy have 25% higher stock value than their less sustainable competitors, there's a business case here. Accenture, CEOs agree that sustainability should be fully embedded into company strategy and operations, and will be within 10 years. For those of you in marketing, the PR firms, Ogilvy, surveying consumer opinions. The green consumer is now 82% of the market. Not all of them are the Birkenstock-wearing, granola crunchy hippie, deep green consumers. But all things equal, 82% of the market would prefer to buy a green product. Cone Communication. Not only would they prefer to buy a green product, if they think your company is doing something bad, they will leave. Last year, Cone surveyed countries with half the world's population. 93% of consumers say companies must go beyond legal compliance, that companies must analyze and evolve their business practices to make their impact as positive as possible. Conversely, Havas Media doesn't like that one either. Can you do your magic again?
I'll try. I think this is loose.
You think that is loose, huh? That's interesting. Only 28%, oh, it is loose. Well, maybe. Only 28% of consumers think that companies are doing enough to protect the environment. Most, it's okay, you can leave it. I'll just roll on. Most consumers wouldn't care if 70% of brands went away. So you see companies doing this. We're a natural product. Green car of the year. Yeah, that's huge. On the other hand, this is actually, I think, a good sign. And one of the things I teach my students is hypocrisy is the first step to real change. Take Jeff Immelt, CEO of General Electric. He announced Ecomagination, May of 2006, stood with Jonathan Lash of the World Resources Institute and announced this great program, Ecomagination. The enviros jumped up and down because all he did was badge as green products he was already making. That is indeed greenwashing. He promised by 2012 to cut GE's carbon emissions 1%. Oh boy. Next year, his green badged products had doubled in sales volume, and he'd cut his carbon emissions 4%. By 2010, he announced that if Ecomagination were a separate company, it would be Fortune 130. With rapid growth in sales, oh, and he'd cut his carbon emissions 21%. You greenwash at your peril, though. Kashi, believed by many customers to be an authentically sustainable product, and it was, until Kashi got bought by Kellogg's. Now, Kellogg's say they bought it because they want to bring sustainability up the company. But that's a hard thing to do. And Kellogg's started putting pressure on Kashi to put out PUF, corporate social responsibility reports. I know because I wrote one for them. And we protested all the way, and as soon as we were done, we said, thanks, we're going to go somewhere else. And we warned them, you are at risk as a company. Consumers care. They read labels. They do internet research. And last year, Kashi got dinged and then was dumb enough to say, we've done nothing wrong. There really isn't a definition of natural, and therefore we can say whatever we want. FTC is now looking at companies saying, are you truly green? Prove it. What are your environmental credentials? This is particularly important for a state like Iowa that has agriculture. We are going to transition to sustainable agriculture. We're going to do it because the agriculture we have now cannot long endure. The chemicals that are going into the water, the runoff that's going into the Gulf of Mexico, the stuff that's in the food that customers are eating, the commodity export business of agriculture is not what customers want. If you look at the top menu trends of 2012, locally sourced meat and seafood. Now, you're going to have a hard time with the locally sourced seafood, but locally sourced meat. What do you do with confined animal feeding operations? Don't have them. Sell local meat off local producers to local stores. This is what customers want. Locally grown produce, hyper-local sourcing, sustainability, locally produced wine and beer, farm-to-table restaurant operations. These are the top restaurant trends this year. You ignore this at your peril. Why is it that the companies that are bringing to market disruptive innovation in ways to cut carbon, either through efficiency or through cool new products, are financially outperforming ordinary companies? Perhaps in part because in nature, carbon is not the world's greatest poison. It's the building block of life. So at Cornell, Jeff Coates has shown that you can make plastic taking CO2 out of the air. It's cheaper to do it that way. Calera, this is a company that is misting seawater through the flue gas of a natural gas plant, making cement the same way that coral reefs do, the carbonates. And I spoke today at lunch with a research scientist who's looking at microbes making carbonates. That's pretty cool. This is the kind of research. It's an approach called biomimicry. How does nature do business? learning from nature and replicating it because it's more profitable and it solves the big problems facing us. There's a brilliant book by a man named Peter Diamandis, founded a university. This is a threat to y'all. A university called Singularity. They're not accredited. Their students come for 10 weeks from all over the world. They're beating them off with a stick to be entrepreneurs, to study with some of the great entrepreneurs, and then go home and put this stuff into practice as businesses. Fashionably thinner. Come on, guys. Plastic water bottles are not part of sustainability. A lot of them end up in the water. There is a gyre in the Pacific Ocean, bigger than the state of Texas, made up of plastic. We need to reinvent plastic. So a company called Method is doing it. Their bottles are 100% made of recycled plastic, 25% of it harvested from the oceans. What can you do? Support companies that are innovating to solve the big problems facing us. Every day you vote with your dollars. And if you as consumers, if the university as a big consumer, the town, the state, sources sustainably from companies that are innovating, work out deals with the innovative companies to place your students in internships, and create innovative companies here at the university. This is how we're going to solve the problems facing us. Again, no polar bears. This is business. We're going to need to reinvent accounting. If it's true what those 41 studies say, why? What is it that these managers are doing that is enhancing every aspect of shareholder value? That's what Ray Anderson found. Clearly, if you cut your costs through efficiency, you drive your profitability. That's easy. You also reduce your risk. Companies like BP did a $500,000 shortcut, cost the company at least $10 billion, probably $20 billion by the time they're done, and maybe the company's franchised to operate. Attract and retain the best talent. Young people, 92% of recent graduates want to work for a green company. Innovation. A commitment to sustainability drives a company's innovation. Universities too. Labor productivity, reduced sick time, market share, differentiating your product. We've counted 13 aspects of what we call the integrated bottom line. And there's a guy named Robert Eccles at Harvard, a guy named Mike Cruz, professors, who have a book out called One Report, in which they're trying to take this concept of the integrated bottom line and put it into practice. Supply chain management, that's what Walmart's doing, and reducing the cost of distrust. The companies that get it right will be the billionaires of tomorrow. They'll be the first to the future. This is my new hero, Paul Polman, CEO of Unilever, an insignificant little company. This time last year, Paul announced he is not going to report quarterly. He lost 10% of his shareholders. He said, I respect you as human beings, but if you believe that managing for this quarter is the way to grow value in the company, I don't want you as my owners. He said this short-term mentality is what drove the 2008 collapse. And that as a company, what we need to do is deliver what our customers want. To do that, we have to invest for the long term. Unilever has announced the Sustainable Living Plan. cut their environmental impact in half by 2020, source everything that comes from something grown sustainably, note to Iowa farmers, and help lift 1 billion people out of poverty. This is pretty cool, huh? And it feeds into this concept of what constitutes shareholder value. Particularly in Europe, Britain, managing directors must take a long-term view. Denmark, companies must report on their corporate social responsibility. South Africa, Australia. The international community is looking at this concept. And at the concept of how do we count the worth that intact ecosystems give to our economy. Right now they're counted as having a value of 0 on corporate balance sheets. This is wrong. We may not know what their value is to us, but we know it's not 0. So the one thing to come out of the Rio Plus 20 meeting was a commitment by 50 companies, major companies around the world, to begin counting the value to them of these ecosystem services. The Prince of Wales put together a group called Accounting for Sustainability. A4S and the Global Reporting Initiative, GRI, have teamed up to create the International Integrated Reporting Committee. Here in this country, we have the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board. We're going to reinvent accounting. PricewaterhouseCoopers worked with Puma to create an environmental profit and loss statement. What they did was look at 2 aspects of risk: cost of carbon, cost of water. And they were very surprised to find that it equaled the company's profitability. That got management attention. Jochen Zeitz said that this statement is a milestone in Puma's mission to become the most desirable and sustainable company in the world. In this country, a man named Bob Willard was an IBM executive, has put some numbers to just 7 aspects of this integrated bottom line and calculates that behaving sustainably delivers you enhanced profitability of 38%. You can go on Bob's website, download these spreadsheets, and make your own calculations. But clearly, those of you who are business students, what you're being taught in accounting is probably wrong or incomplete. This stuff is material, and it is affecting the profitability of companies. So we're going to need to reinvent education. And that's what you're doing. You guys have a tremendous president that she would come in and make this commitment. It's going to transform this university. Change is hard. Margaret Mead said the only person who likes change is a wet baby, and I'd argue the baby squalls all the way through the process. But we're going to change. In part because Buckminster Fuller said the best way to predict the future is to invent it. He also said we need to make the world work for 100% of humanity as fast as we can and without causing any additional harm. Does that sound to you like a goal worth having? You've heard this phrase, yeah? Don't take a risk the second mouse gets the cheese. Come on, guys. Let's be like this little feller. Let's slap on a helmet and go for it. My mouse went away. I'm not going to get my mouse back. No worries. Well, that's the end of the show. Thank you very much.